Balderdash, John Newbery and the Boisterous Birth of Children's Books. Written by Michelle Markle. Illustrated by Nancy Carpenter. Balderdash. Balderdash, John Newbery and the Boisterous Birth of Children's Books. Written by Michelle Markle. Illustrated by Nancy Carpenter. Welcome! This book's for you. Every page, every picture, every word, and even its letters are designed for your pleasure. Lucky, lucky reader. Be glad it's not 1726. In those days of powdered wigs and petticoats, England was brimming with books. Books of pirates and monsters and miniature people, tales of travels and quests and shipwrecks and crimes. At the fairs, in the market stalls, in the bookshop windows were hundreds of wonderful books. But not for children. Oh no, children had to read preachy poems and fables, religious texts that made them fear that death was near, and manuals that told them where to stand, how to sit, not to laugh, and scores of other rules. Because the future champion of children's books was just a lad. His name was John Newbery. The boy lived on a farm, but fancied reading more than forking hay. So upon coming of age, he set off to work for a printer. John got a kick out of type sticks and type stands and chases and coins. He came to love galleys and presses and the smell of fresh ink. As soon as he was able, John became a publisher himself. Then he went big time. He moved to London, center of the book-selling trade. Old London Bridge. Smack dab in the heart of the book marketplace in St. Paul's churchyard, he found a place for a store. Brilliant! The streets were bustling with tradesmen, doctors, lawyers, clerks, and many other eager readers. John wanted to publish fine books for the whole lot of them, and for their children. He knew the youngsters were hungry for stories. Many boys and girls handed coppers to street hawkers for ugly chapbooks of fairy tales or for chopped-up versions of grown-up books. John liked children. Why shouldn't they have delightful books of their own? John, what were you thinking? What about the parents? Many mums and dads worried that if their little nippers read fun books, they'd turn wild as beasts. Balderdash! Reading should be a treat for children. That's what a famous philosopher wrote, and John agreed. So did two other publishers. One issued a book with alphabet rhymes and well-known stories, and the other printed itty-bitty books about animals, plants, and local buildings. Reading should be a treat for children. John Locke. I agree. So do we, so do we. John wanted his first book for children to be irresistible. There'd be letters from Jack the Giant Killer. There'd be pictures of Pitch and Hustle, Hoop and Hide, Blind Man's Bluff, and other children's games. Plus, ABCs, proverbs, and other classic material, and for extra punch, a message to mums and dads. He ordered gilt floral paper for the covers and titled his creation, A Little Pretty Pocketbook. Price of book alone, 6d, with a ball or pin cushion, 8d, the notice read. A book and toy? Why hadn't anyone else thought of that? Then John set his bright books in the window of his store and wondered, will the parents buy them? Are they too cheerful? The children gobbled them up like plum cakes. John thought if they liked fun, attractive books, they'd probably like a magazine too. Grown-ups read magazines. Why shouldn't children? A magazine with rhymes, riddles, recipes, stories, adorned with crisp copperplate engravings. Working in the back of his bookshop or chatting with his chums in the tavern, John's mind bubbled with more ideas. For older children, he printed books about arithmetic, geography, astronomy, and other subjects, including one taught by a pretend boy philosopher named Tom Telescope. Then John came up with his most ingenious product for youngsters yet, a novel. Grown-ups were reading novels. Why shouldn't the little masters and ladies? One long, luscious story to savor for several days. The History of Little Goody Two-Shoes is about a raggedy orphan who is left to wander the roads. Despite many misfortunes, the girl betters herself. She carves her own alphabet blocks and teaches poor children. She strolls around with a dog, a lamb, and various birds that she has rescued and educated. Ralph, her pet raven, even writes poems. Though she starts off penniless, Goody ends up marrying a country squire rich enough to own a coach and six. A coach and six? In those days, that was like riding in a luxury car. Goody went from rags to riches without a fairy godmother. She did it through study, hard work, and kindness. You can too, the book was saying, and John believed it. Goody Two-Shoes became a smash hit, both in England and across the ocean in America. To this day, its author is a mystery. All the books John published for his little friends, as he called the young readers, were written anonymously or by people with silly made-up names. Another of John's books was about a tumultuous fair, and its dedication was signed, You Know Who. But everyone knew who. Who else had a shop that sold ABC books, gift books, books about Tom Thumb and Giles Gingerbread, books of jokes and riddles, books of science, history, and geography that were loved so hard, that were there thumbed so often, that they came apart at the spine. Who else sold thousands of copies, inspiring other publishers to start making delightful books for young readers? John Newbery, the father of children's literature. Huzzah! Huzzah! The grand design in the nurture of children is to make them strong, hardy, healthy, virtuous, wise, and happy. John Newbery, from A Little Pretty Pocketbook. John Newbery learned publishing as well as shopkeeping by working as an assistant to William Carnan in the city of Reading. Carnan published a newspaper called The Reading Mercury and ran a store that sold medicines and other wares. Upon his death, Newbery inherited a share of the business. 2 years later, Newbery married Carnan's widow, Mary, and became stepfather to her 3 children. Later, they had 3 children of their own. Newbery began publishing newspapers and books for adults while living in Reading, and continued to do so after moving to London. Noted authors Oliver Goldsmith, Christopher Smart, and Samuel Johnson wrote for his adult publications, and may have penned some of his children's books. Newbery's books for children were approximately 4 inches by 3 inches, or 10 centimeters by 7.5 centimeters, which made them easily portable in pockets. He published more than 100 books for children over his lifetime and sold thousands of copies, establishing both the value and popularity of books written, illustrated, designed, and printed especially for the perspectives and enthusiasms of children. Along with books, Newbery sold a patented medicine called Dr. James's Fever Powder, and he came up with clever ways of advertising both books and medicine. He ran ads in newspapers and had characters mention his products inside his books. Woglog the Giant was a villain in a story in Newbery's Lilliputian magazine, but later in Newbery's Fables in Verse, Woglog changes his bad ways and steps civilly into a bookstore to read some of Mr. Newbery's little books. At the beginning of the history of Little Goody Two-Shoes, Marjorie's father dies because he was seized with violent fever in place where Dr. James's powder was not to be had. When Marjorie becomes a tutor, she sings a song from Newbery's Little Pretty Plaything, teaches a school run by a character from Nurse Truelove's New Year's Gift, and her students read books sold at the Bible and Son, Newbery's bookshop. 20 years before Newbery was born, noted philosopher John Locke wrote a popular treatise called Some Thoughts Concerning Education. He believed it was important for children to have healthy bodies, strong moral character, and the right choice of learning materials, including easy and pleasant books. Locke's ideas may have influenced two publishers who made light-hearted illustrated books for children shortly before Newbery. Thomas Borman issued a series of miniature books on plants, animals, and landmarks between 1740 and 1743. And Thomas Cooper published his ABC Miscellany in 1742. Cooper's wife, Mary, published the very first collection of nursery rhymes 2 years later, around the same time that Newbery's A Little Pretty Pocketbook appeared. 155 years after Newbery lived, the American Library Association created the very first children's book award in the world and named it after John Newbery. It's given annually to the most distinguished contribution to American literature for children to this day. Some information about the books mentioned in this book, further reading, and then a selected bibliography if you would like to know more about John Newbery.